President Trump hits China with more tariff sanctions on fentanyl and threatens broader economic sanctions, and it's about time. Hello, this is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button. Today, we're going to be talking about President Trump. He's leveling sanctions against China, as well as more tariffs in response to a marked escalation on the trade war front here. The markets are reacting. They weren't too pleased last week. They're in a bit of a recovery now following the G7 meeting where President Trump announced that there's going to be a trade deal with Japan, which is showing that there are alternatives to China that we ought to be considering here. But just want to run you through these developments because things are escalating quickly here. The week began and proceeded through the week where Trump was leveling new sanctions against China on the fentanyl issue. They're going more than you can see here on August 21, President Trump, the White House announces actions to crack down on trafficking of fentanyl and synthetic opioids and better position private sector to protect the homeland. The Treasury Department announced it is identifying 2 Chinese nationals and a Chinese-based drug trafficking organization as significant narcotics traffickers pursuant to the Foreign Narcotics Kingpin Designation Act, and designated 1 associate and a China-based entity for being owned or controlled by one of the Chinese nationals. Now, if you look at the opioid deaths, and particularly fentanyl, these deaths have been escalating. And in 2017 alone, almost 29,000 people in America overdosed on fentanyl. And that, when you think about the sheer human magnitude, that's more than the attacks of the Lusitania or 9/11 in 2001 combined. This is a direct hit on the American people. And President Trump is responding with the sanctions now. And I say it's about time. Now, China responded by hitting the U.S. with $75 billion of tariffs. It's seemingly in response to the sanctions. President Trump had delayed a 10% tariff on the additional $300 billion of goods until December. That was going to come atop a $250 billion on other goods, 25% tariff on those goods. So President Trump was delaying till December, but then China hit us with a tariff on $75 billion of goods, including agriculture. And so President Trump has come back and he's going to increase the tariffs even more now. We're going up to 30% on the $250 billion of goods. Instead of 10% on the remaining $300 billion of goods, we're going to go up to 15%. And that's taking place in September, according to President Trump. In addition, President Trump cited authority under the International Economic Emergency Powers Act of 1977, where this is the same powers that Congress has given to the presidency to enact economic sanctions on countries overseas, and you can shut down transactions, any transactions on foreign exchange, the importing and exporting of currency or securities, transfers of credits. They can basically shut down commerce with all of China if the sanctions are severe enough and they impact enough industries. So President Trump said on August 23rd, to much consternation on Wall Street, but that our country has lost stupidly trillions of dollars with China over many years. They have stolen our intellectual property at a rate of hundreds of billions of dollars a year, and they want to continue. I won't let that happen. We don't need China, and frankly, we would be far better off without them. The vast amounts of money made and stolen by China from the United States year after year for decades will and must stop. Our great American companies are hereby ordered to immediately start looking for an alternative to China, including bringing your companies home and making your products in the United States. I'll be responding to China's tariffs this afternoon. This is a great opportunity for the United States. Also, I'm ordering all carriers of FedEx, Amazon, UPS, and the Post Office to search for and refuse all deliveries of fentanyl from China or anywhere else. President Xi said this would stop. It didn't. Our economy, because of our gains the past 2.5 years, is much larger than that of China, and we will keep it that way. So President Trump's taking a hard line here, and market analysts and Wall Street and many people didn't like what they were hearing about cutting off commerce with China, but very clearly under the Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977, the president can institute sanctions. This law has been used against Iran, North Korea, Russia. It's been commonly used by presidents, and Congress has delegated this authority to the president. And I don't think that that's really going to change. That's why, presidents are really powerful under our constitutional system, and Congress has the power to regulate foreign commerce, and they have the power to enact all laws they deem necessary and proper to bring into execution those powers. And so in this case, they've said we want the president to do sanctions. Now, if Congress doesn't like that law, they could change the law, but they probably shouldn't do it just because of the action against China. They should take a broader view of the exercise of executive powers and what Congress feels comfortable delegating the administration with. But these types of sanctions, just as they can escalate quickly, they can de-escalate quickly. And that's why in the Reciprocal Trade Act of 1934 was enacted to allow presidents to reduce tariffs quickly. After the Smoot-Hawley tariffs of the Depression, that Congress put into place, they passed another law that said, well, let the president decide when they can reciprocally lower tariffs. So I think the Economic Emergency Powers Act kind of works the same way, where Congress has decided in their wisdom that they want to have presidents with the ability to either level up tariffs or level them down, level up sanctions or level them down in a reciprocal manner. And that President Trump can use that to his advantage, and I think that's what he's doing here to forestall any further escalation by China and to try to bring them back to the table to talk on a trade deal that could include currency, intellectual property, and so forth, the whole 9 yards. Again, now under the laws, the sanctions, it can include any transactions in foreign commerce, the import and the export of currency and securities, and prohibit any acquisition, holding, withholding, use, transfer, withdrawal, transportation, importation, or exportation of, or dealing in, or exercise in any right, power, or privilege with respect to any track or at transactions involving any property in which any foreign country or national thereof has an interest by any person, or with respect to any property subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. So again, he could ban all commerce. He could cut it off with a stroke of a pen. He could bar the purchase of U.S. treasuries by China, banning the export or import of any securities. And again, China's opium war with the United States has it kills tens of thousands of Americans, and that's up from 3,000 deaths in 2013. And a good chunk of that's coming from China. Now, Americans for Limited Government President Rick Manning has come out, and he's supporting President Trump's actions, particular to fentanyl, but overall as well. Quote, Chinese and U.S. negotiators are scheduled to meet this week, and President Trump will be meeting with other leaders at the G7 about China. Hopefully, they will find a basic common ground that accomplishes three things: ending China's opium war against the U.S. using fentanyl, protecting intellectual property, and ending competitive currency devaluations by China. In the past, U.S. and Chinese negotiators have agreed on all three of these points. Let's hope Beijing will finally sign off so the world can begin to embrace fair and reciprocal free trade, and the scourge of fentanyl can be shelved forever, saving tens of thousands of American lives every year. And I think it's about time. This is what's different about President Trump compared to his predecessors. He's actually willing to fight. That's what he promised to do in 2016. He's getting tough with China. That's meant addressing trade, but also the North Korean nuclear threat. The U.S. is arming Taiwan right now, and Trump has also spoken out in solidarity with the people of Hong Kong who are marching for their freedom right now. In the meantime, we're seeking out alternatives to China. There's a new trade deal with Japan that was just announced, and that could help. The USMCA, US and Mexico Canada trade agreement. Anything we can do to shift production elsewhere. It can be back to the United States, but if it goes elsewhere, China's not going to benefit from it, and that's going to hopefully force them to the table, and we can start to deal with these issues. And China's currency devaluations that have been harming the U.S. economy, cheapening Chinese exports to the United States. With their devaluation in the mid-90s, they were able to dramatically increase market share, particularly after entering the WTO in 2001. As they entered the financial crisis, they began revaluing the currency, but not before they had already achieved a market-dominant position globally on manufacturing. In the meantime, the U.S. global manufacturing market share has declined. So according to World Bank data, U.S. manufacturing market share declined from 13% down to 7% in 2017. China rose from 5% to over 16%. And so while we were losing market share, we were also losing labor participation amongst working age adults. And the U.S. economy is not growing above 4% since 2000, not above 3% since 2005. We came close in 2018 at 2.93%, but still not quite 3% yet. But now with the escalation, with the trade conflict with China, dialogue is, of course, preferred. Chinese officials keep saying that too, but they also appear that, as if they don't want to keep any of their promises when they are made. So this is all coming to a head right now. Beijing appears more interested in inflicting damage with its $75 billion of tariffs on the U.S. economy than talking ahead of the 2020 elections, probably in hopes that some other candidate will win the election besides President Trump, a Democrat, who would then acquiesce to China on these trade issues and everything else. We'll see, but I think that's a bad bet by Beijing if that's how they're going with this. History teaches that it's usually a bad idea to bet against America, and the strategy on their part seems to be to back Trump into a corner, and he's come out with guns blazing here. I don't think President Trump is backing down here. And whatever he intended to accomplish vis-a-vis trade, China, globalization, this is Trump's moment to shine. And I think he intends to see this through. And I'll leave you with the close here. This could all have a lasting impact. What Trump is doing, it's setting the forward U.S. posture in 2021 and beyond. If he's the president in 2021 or if there's a new president. With these new sanctions, the likelihood is that Trump has already permanently shifted U.S. footing to take a harder line on China, a policy his successor, whether in 2021 or 2024, will continue to be compelled to continue. And for better or for worse, that is Trump's legacy. And that's the commentary. This is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and have a good day.